A startling message. The message arrived without warning, beamed simultaneously to every computer, phone, and television on Earth. Alien glyphs danced across screens, shifting and morphing until they coalesced into stark words of unaccented English. People of Earth, the message began, you are not alone. For centuries, we have watched you from afar, marveling at your tenacity, your relentless pursuit of knowledge, and your capacity for both great compassion and unfathomable destruction. But now, your rapid technological advancement and expansionist tendencies have marked you as a threat to the delicate balance of power in the cosmos. Around the world, streets emptied as people rushed indoors to witness the momentous transmission. In homes, offices, and public squares, an eerie silence descended, broken only by the cold, synthetic voice emanating from billions of devices. You have 2 rotations of your planet to surrender unconditionally to the Zoran Imperium and submit to our guidance, lest you face annihilation. Your leaders will board the crafts that have landed outside their capitals, where they will formally relinquish control of your world to us. Any resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. As the message concluded, panic erupted across the globe. Throngs of people filled the streets, some weeping, some shouting in defiance, others frantically seeking shelter. In the halls of power, however, a very different scene unfolded. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a fortified bunker known only to a select few, a group of men and women from all corners of the world gathered around a massive holographic display. They watched impassively as the alien transmission repeated on a loop, their faces not revealing a hint of surprise or fear. So it has begun, intoned a tall, silver-haired woman, her Japanese accent softened by decades spent abroad. The Zoran Imperium. Are they the ones we've been preparing for? A dark-skinned man with a neatly trimmed beard nodded. The quantum signatures matched the intel we received from the Prometheus incident back in '47. They're the ones who have been manipulating events from behind the scenes, trying to keep us divided and ignorant of their existence. More fools they, snorted a lanky redhead, his youthful face a stark contrast to the rows of medals adorning his uniform. They think they're dealing with the same fractured, primitive species they've been observing for centuries. They have no idea how much we've accomplished in secret. A murmur of agreement filled the room as the assembled leaders of the clandestine Earth Defense Alliance contemplated the magnitude of the moment they had been preparing for since the end of the Second World War. The alien crashed at Roswell had been a revelation, proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. But more than that, it had been a warning, a glimpse of the advanced technologies and hostile intentions of the forces that lurked in the darkness of space. In the decades that followed, a secret global alliance had formed, one that transcended national boundaries and ideological divides. While the world's governments maintained the facade of business as usual, the brightest minds and most advanced technologies were funneled into black projects aimed at securing humanity's survival in the face of the inevitable confrontation with the unknown. Now, as the world teetered on the brink of surrender or annihilation, the fruits of their labors would be revealed. The quantum-cloaked stealth ships, the singularity-powered weapons, the AI-driven planetary defense grid, all would be brought to bear against the alien threat. For the select few gathered in that hidden bunker, there was no question of surrender. They had dedicated their lives to this moment, to the defense of Earth and all its peoples. And as they watched the chaos unfold on the screens before them, a grim determination settled over the room. The Zoran Imperium had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity, and now they would learn the true meaning of resistance, humanity's hidden strength. As the world's leaders scrambled to respond to the alien ultimatum, the Earth Defense Alliance sprang into action. From hidden bases on every continent, sleek, obsidian-hulled ships slipped their moorings and rocketed into the sky, their quantum cloaking devices rendering them invisible to both human and alien sensors. In the depths of space, far beyond the orbit of the moon, a vast network of automated defense platforms thrummed to life. Powered by zero-point energy and armed with relativistic kinetic kill vehicles, these silent sentinels had been seated over decades, a secret bulwark against the day when humanity's survival would depend on the strength of its shield. At the heart of this clandestine defense network was a marvel of human ingenuity and cooperation: the Prometheus Singularity Drive. Born from the reverse-engineered wreckage of the Roswell crash and painstakingly refined over generations, this revolutionary technology allowed human ships to slip the bonds of conventional spacetime, enabling them to strike with devastating precision from impossible angles. As the alien fleet approached Earth, confident in their technological supremacy and the inevitability of human capitulation, they found themselves suddenly faced with a species that had spent decades preparing for this very moment. The first volley of relativistic projectiles tore through the Zoran formation, bypassing their deflector shields as if they were gossamer and ripping into the hulls of their ships with apocalyptic force. In the confusion that followed, the stealthed human warships made their move. Dropping their cloaks and engaging their singularity drives, they blinked into existence behind the alien lines, catching the Zoran vessels in a withering crossfire of quantum-entangled plasma and graviton beams. On the bridge of the Terran flagship, the Erebus, Fleet Admiral Nadia Smirnova watched with grim satisfaction as the aliens' formation crumbled under the onslaught. A veteran of countless secret missions and the mastermind behind humanity's space warfare doctrine, she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this day. "Status report," she barked, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the bridge. "Zoran fleet in disarray," responded her tactical officer, a steely-eyed lieutenant named Singh. "Their shields are ineffective against our weapons, and they're struggling to lock onto our ships." Admiral Smirnova allowed herself a tight smile. The aliens had fallen right into their trap, underestimating humanity's resolve and technological prowess. But even as the thought crossed her mind, a new alarm blared across the bridge. "Admiral, we're detecting a massive energy surge from the Zoran flagship," shouted Singh, his fingers flying across his console. They're opening a wormhole right in the middle of their fleet." Smirnova's eyes widened as she watched the tactical display, a cold knot of dread forming in her stomach. The aliens were attempting the desperate gambit, one that could turn the tide of battle in an instant. "All ships, concentrate fire on that wormhole," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "We cannot let them bring in reinforcements." As the human fleet poured a ceaseless storm of fire into the swirling vortex of the wormhole, Smirnova could only watch and pray that their efforts would be enough. The fate of Earth and all of humanity hung in the balance. "The trap is sprung." The wormhole yawned open like a gaping wound in the fabric of space, a swirling maelstrom of exotic energy that threatened to tear the very universe asunder. From its depths, a new wave of Zoran ships emerged, their hulls bristling with strange, unsettling weapons that pulsed with an eerie, sickly light. On the bridge of the Erebus, Admiral Smirnova watched in horror as the reinforcements poured through the rift, their numbers swelling the ranks of the beleaguered alien fleet. The trap they had so carefully laid for the Zoran had been turned against them, and now the fate of Earth hung by a thread. "All ships, fall back to secondary positions," she barked, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a new strategy on the fly. "Concentrate fire on the new arrivals, and for God's sake, keep them away from the planet." As the human fleet scrambled to regroup, the Zoran pressed their advantage, their strange new weapons carving through the earthly ship's quantum shields as if they were paper. The void lit up with the blooms of dying vessels, human and alien alike, as the battle devolved into a desperate, brutal slugging match. On the surface of Earth, the situation was no less dire. In cities across the globe, massive Zoran dropships descended from the sky, disgorging hordes of alien shock troops onto the streets. Clad in living armor and wielding weapons that defied human comprehension, these nightmarish warriors cut a swath of destruction through the panicked populace, their objectives clear: to sow chaos and terror, and to crush any resistance before it could coalesce. But the people of Earth were not so easily cowed. In the face of this alien onslaught, they fought back with a ferocity born of desperation and a stubborn refusal to submit. Soldiers and civilians alike took up arms, turning every street and building into a battleground. They fought with everything they had, from jury-rigged quantum rifles to improvised explosives, determined to make the invaders pay for every inch of ground they took. Among the chaos and carnage, stories of heroism began to emerge. In London, a lone guardsman armed with nothing but a quantum force saber held off a platoon of Zoran shock troops, buying time for a group of civilians to escape. In Tokyo, a team of hackers managed to infiltrate the alien battle network, sowing confusion and disarray among their ranks. And in the skies above New York, a squadron of human fighters, hopelessly outmatched and outnumbered, sacrificed themselves in a kamikaze run against a Zoran dreadnought, taking the behemoth with them in a blaze of nuclear fire. But for every tale of valor and sacrifice, there were a dozen more of sorrow and loss. Cities burned, millions perished, and the once proud armies of Earth found themselves pushed to the brink of annihilation. The price of freedom, it seemed, would be paid in blood and tears. As the battle raged on, both above and upon the earth, a grim realization began to dawn on those who fought and those who watched. This was no longer a war for conquest or domination. It had become a struggle for survival, a fight to determine nothing less than the fate of the human race. And in that moment, as the flames of war consumed the world, the people of Earth found within themselves a strength they had never known, a resolve as unbreakable as the bonds that held them together. They would fight, and they would die, but they would never surrender. For this was their home, their birthright, and they would defend it to their last breath. The price of freedom. As the battle raged on, the toll on both sides mounted. The Zoran, for all their technological might and countless millennia of conquest, found themselves faced with a species that defied their every expectation. Humans, it seemed, were not so easily broken or subdued. In the ruins of Earth's cities, the invaders found themselves mired in a nightmarish quagmire of urban warfare. Every shattered building became a fortress, every burnt-out car a foxhole. The humans fought with a savage cunning, luring the Zoran into ambushes and death traps, whittling away at their numbers with a relentless, remorseless efficiency. Above, in the cold vastness of space, the war had become a brutal slugging match. The Zoran's wormhole had turned the tide, but the human fleet refused to yield. They fought on with a desperate ferocity, throwing themselves against the alien ships in wave after suicidal wave. On the bridge of the Erebus, Admiral Smirnova watched the casualty reports scroll across her screen, each one a knife to her heart. The losses were staggering, the human fleet reduced to a fraction of its former strength. But still, they fought on, driven by a grim determination to make the Zoran bleed for every inch of space they claimed. "Admiral," came a voice from the comm station. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's the President." Smirnova's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Put it through," she ordered, her voice rough with emotion. The screen flickered to life, revealing a haggard, blood-streaked face. It was the President of the United States, his once immaculate suit now torn and filthy, a quantum rifle clutched in his hands. "Admiral," he said, his voice shaking with exhaustion and grief, "we can't hold out much longer. The aliens are overrunning our defenses, and our casualties they're beyond counting." Smirnova's jaw clenched, her heart aching for the man, for all the brave souls fighting and dying on the planet below. "We'll get you reinforcements," she promised, though she knew it was a hollow vow. "Just hold on a little longer." The President shook his head, a sad smile playing across his lips. "No, Admiral," he said softly. "You and I both know that's not possible. The fleet is the only thing standing between Earth and total annihilation. You must hold the line, no matter the cost." Smirnova's eyes burned with unused tears, the weight of the moment crushing down upon her. "Mr. President," she whispered, I don't know if we can win this." The president's smile widened, a strange peace settling over his features. "Of course we can, Admiral," he said, his voice ringing with a sudden, unshakable conviction. "Because we are human and we do not know how to yield." With that, the transmission cut out, leaving Smirnova alone with the weight of the world on her shoulders. She took a deep, shuddering breath, then squared her shoulders, her eyes hardening with a renewed sense of purpose. "To all ships," she said, her voice booming across the fleet's comm network, "this is Admiral Smirnova. The time has come for our final stand. We will not falter, we will not yield. We will fight to our last breath, and we will make the enemy pay dearly for every life they take. For Earth, for humanity, we will hold the line." As a ragged cheer went up across the fleet, Smirnova turned her gaze to the viewscreen, to the roiling maelstrom of the battle beyond. The odds were against them, the price of victory steeper than any they had ever paid. But they were human, and they would not go gently into the night. They would rage, and they would fight, and they would make the universe tremble with the force of their defiance. For this was their destiny, their birthright, and they would claim it with every fiber of their being, snatching victory from defeat. In the heart of the Erebus, deep within its armored core, a team of scientists and engineers worked feverishly around a strange, pulsating device. It was the product of decades of secret research, a weapon of last resort that had been conceived in the darkest days of the war. They called it the Omega Protocol. "Admiral," came the voice of Dr. Elena Ivanova, the lead scientist on the project. "The device is ready, but I must warn you, the consequences of using it are unpredictable." Smirnova's face was grim, her eyes haunted by the weight of the decision before her. She had read the reports, seen the simulations. The Omega Protocol was a gamble, a roll of the dice that could either save humanity or doom it to oblivion. But what choice did they have? The Zoran were on the verge of victory, their forces poised to crush the last remnants of human resistance. If they failed here, now, then all the sacrifices, all the lives lost, would be for nothing. "Do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Activate the device." Dr. Ivanova nodded, her fingers flying across the control panel. The device began to hum, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. Then, with a blinding flash, it unleashed its power. Across the battlefield, Zoran ships began to twist and warp, their hulls crumpling like tin foil as the very fabric of space-time bent to the will of the Omega Protocol. Wormholes snapped shut, severing the invaders' lines of reinforcement and supply. Their weapons, once so fearsome, sputtered and died, their exotic energies drained away by the all-consuming vortex of the device. In an instant, the tide of the battle had turned. The human fleet, battered and bloodied but unbroken, surged forward, their weapons blazing with renewed fury. They tore into the disoriented Zoran ships, blasting them to atoms with a savage joy. On the planet below, the story was the same. The alien ground forces, once an unstoppable juggernaut, found themselves cut off and isolated, their advanced technology suddenly useless. The human resistance, galvanized by this sudden turn of events, fell upon them with a vengeance, driving them back with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. But even as the battle turned in humanity's favor, a new threat emerged. In the confusion and chaos, a small Zoran strike team had managed to infiltrate the Erebus, their objective clear: to seize control of the Omega Protocol and turn it against the humans. Smirnova's eyes widened as alarms blared across the bridge, warning of the intruder's presence. She spun to face Dr. Ivanova, her face a mask of dread. "Doctor, you must protect the device at all costs," she ordered, her hand already reaching for her sidearm. "If the Zoran capture it, all will be lost." Dr. Ivanova nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Understood, Admiral," she said, her fingers already dancing across the control panel, initiating the device's self-destruct sequence. "They will not have it, I swear it." As Smirnova and her security team raced to confront the intruders, the fate of the Omega Protocol, and with it, the fate of humanity itself, hung in the balance. The final battle had begun, and its outcome would determine the course of history for generations to come. A new era dawns. The battle for the Omega Protocol was brutal and bloody. A desperate struggle played out in the cramped, smoke-filled corridors of the Erebus. Admiral Smirnova and her security team fought with a savage ferocity, determined to protect the device at any cost. But the Zoran strike team was relentless, their living armor shrugging off the humans' quantum rounds as if they were mere raindrops. They advanced with a grim, methodical purpose, their alien weapons spitting death with every step. In the heart of the ship, Dr. Ivanova worked frantically to initiate the self-destruct sequence, her fingers flying across the control panel in a blur of desperate motion. She knew that if the Zoran captured the device, they would turn it against the human fleet, undoing all the gains they had made. Just as the sequence was about to initialize, a searing bolt of plasma tore through her console, reducing it to molten slag. She spun, her eyes widening in horror as a lone Zoran warrior loomed over her, its weapon leveled at her head. But before it could fire, a blur of motion slammed into the alien, knocking it off balance. It was Admiral Smirnova, her quantum saber blazing with an eerie blue light as she engaged the Zoran in a deadly dance of blades and fury. The two warriors clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and parries, their movements almost too fast for the eye to follow. But even as Smirnova fought with all the skill and strength at her command, it was clear that the alien was her superior in every way. With a final brutal blow, the Zoran knocked Smirnova's saber from her grasp, sending her crashing to the deck in a crumpled heap. It raised its weapon, ready to deliver the killing blow, only to stagger back. A gaping hole burned through its chest. Behind it stood Dr. Ivanova, a smoking quantum pistol clutched in her trembling hand. "For Earth," she whispered, her voice raw with grief and triumph. As the Zoran fell, the self-destruct sequence finally initialized, the Omega Protocol consuming itself in a blinding flash of light. Across the battlefield, the remaining alien ships began to flicker and fade, their wormhole network collapsing like a house of cards. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the cost had been staggering. Billions dead, entire cities reduced to rubble, the once proud nations of Earth left shattered and broken. The task of rebuilding would be long and difficult, a challenge unlike any the human race had ever faced. Yet as Admiral Smirnova and Dr. Ivanova limped from the ruined corridors of the Erebus, they knew that humanity would rise to that challenge. For in the crucible of war, a new spirit had been forged, a sense of unity and purpose that transcended all the old divisions and rivalries. No longer would humanity be a collection of squabbling nations, each pursuing its own narrow interests. No longer would they be the children of Earth, lost and alone in the vast expanse of the cosmos. Now they were something more. They were the guardians of their world, the masters of their own destiny. And as they turned their eyes to the stars, they knew that their greatest adventures were still to come. For this was not the end, but a new beginning, a new era filled with hope and possibility. The era of the human galactic civilization.